So, I had already said, and I tried to report, that in October of 2017, right after Hurricane Harvey, a number of things happened that were absolutely alarming, and nobody seemed to think they were alarming. The first was that the Centers for Disease Control released data on STDs. And among the data for the STDs was a specific area connected to trichomoniasis. And at the time, the CDC didn't have any data on trick in men. They didn't have any data on trichomoniasis in men. And what they said is that by the time of what was supposed to be the reporting on the STD numbers at that time, somebody had not filled in or gotten them all the data they needed to complete the data set for that time frame in October of 2017. So the initial report that the CDC had in October of 2017 was from old numbers. And the primary finding from the old numbers was that trichomoniasis disproportionately impacted African American women, and there was a specific 13.3% associated with African American women when it came to, if I'm correct, percentage of the population that was being identified. And it was very distinct and it was very specific. And trichomoniasis was the only STD that was not uh, updated. All the other STDs, people had gotten their data in on time, and so they had been able to be reported with the current data. And I was like, whoa, this is concerning, because I had just been in a domestic violence shelter where someone was talking about how women were being prescribed painkillers because they were having discomfort and sometimes even excruciating pain in their sex organs, specifically around their cervix. And what was happening is they were being diagnosed with trichomoniasis because the truth of the matter is they were being cybernetically enhanced. And there were medical practitioners, including people who were involved with understanding exactly what was happening during Hurricane Harvey and what was happening as a result of the so called relief and response to Hurricane Harvey that knew exactly what that was. That when women were reporting that they were having these problems, that they knew what was happening. And they were just diagnosing it as trichomoniasis. Some people were. And then there was a certain prescription for painkillers that they were giving the women with the understanding that they were going to treat it as if it were an STD and because of their discomfort or because of the actual pain. Let me tell you, it's painful. It's not discomfort. It's excruciatingly painful sometimes, especially when you're a bad girl. And this is exactly what they were doing during Harvey. And I was concerned because of the 13.3 metric of African American women. And around this time, they also had a report, and it was specifically published in the Houston Chronicle, but there was also a report on the internet that had numbers concerning income by ethnic group, and I'm reading it. And what it was is it was on a wheel that the demographics associated with one group, the income associated with one group, and the percentages were supposed to be flipped. The metrics they reported around income were exactly and precisely the metric scheme that was part of the pattern of racketeering activity that I had been able to trace first to information about a survey concerning people's happiness and contentment with their medical services provision and insurance. And that was one example of this specific set of metrics that were associated with certain things that would periodically show up in different capacities. Actually, later it showed up in an article that was discussing revisions to the state marketplace around insurance cost for insurance, but at this time it was in the census data on income. And what they were going to do, and I saw them, and I've been seeing them do it in one level or another for a protracted period of time, is that the numbers for what was acknowledged is that the Asians at that time, the Asians were supposed to go to the black. The black were supposed to go to the white. And then something about the and it was Muslim, and I didn't understand. Muslim isn't a demographic on the census, but the Muslims were supposed to go to Hispanics, and then something was supposed to transition where the whites, something ended up going into the Asian. But they understand the whites were to go into the Asian. So white was to become Asian, Asian was to become black, and then somehow whatever was going on was supposed to transition. The black was supposed to become white, and then something was supposed to define the Hispanics as Muslim, and it didn't make sense at the time, but it makes sense now. It's exactly what they're doing. It's what all this crap about the Uyghur camps and the Muslim re-education camps in China is. I contend that China's doing something a lot different with that whole Muslim re-education camp thing, because it's not just Muslims, right? They're also sending Buddhists, and they're also sending people that are different kinds of political dissenters. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like how the early reports would have gotten out to people about what was going on in Germany. But it also sounds like what they're doing right here and have been, and what they do around our emergency assistance. Especially if you're homeless or you're poor. It sounds like what they do is they bring you in under emergency assistance, and then while you're there, they cybernetically enhance you with all the tech going on. And then somebody that's involved with the donations or that has a contract to provide services ends up placing their markers on the people that are registered. What happens to those people later on? Do you see them? And then you're in your own house, but you have to get signed up for emergency assistance. And then what happens? They've been doing this. I've been watching it for years. Nobody wants to acknowledge that that's what they're doing. Well, here's the problem. 3 years is a very important time. And I've been seeing this now, that when the 3-year mark comes and you don't make your quota, or you don't respond to the closeout report, there's a form of default. This is what's happening. This is what I mean by nuclear defaults. If you don't meet your benchmarks, it defaults. What happens with the default? Well, they're leveraging it. Is this what's happening right now? Is the October default coming up? And so now they're doing the twist and turn and they're going after the blacks? All these numbers in America. If you read what they talk about in Europe, and you read other places, and they're talking about who's getting hit by COVID, they want to keep talking. Well, blacks are being disproportionately impacted, but they're expecting a second wave. Did they intentionally pick vulnerable people in the African American community to murder this time so that they could get their metrics data together and then do a turn and twist? Are they going to flip the income bracket too? I contend that's exactly what they're doing. This isn't a second wave. It's a second sortie, a second campaign, a second effort in their campaign. It's terrorism. Can you call it out already? Look, even if you're the kind of person that thought somehow in your little vicious, vindictive streak, it was okay to do that thing that I've been hearing people, including good liberal white people, and all of your, all of those people that are going to give you a conversation once just to see if you made the buy-in and then never talk to you again because you don't. That whole, well, sometimes you got to take one for the team. And then they always have some story about how, well, we did something, but then at first something ended up having to get sacrificed, Krause. You understand? Are you on the team or not? You're our tax girl. We need to sacrifice you so we got the liquidity to do what we need to do for the people. Do you understand? Well, I'm not dead. Right? You haven't been able to affix a specific demography to me yet to be able to seal the deal with my confirmed murder. But it seems like you're trying to work it now. I apologize. Let this serve as a formal notice. My understanding is that census data was reported in what would be another couple of days. Maybe you thought you'd get started early to see how effective it would be. You should never have done this. It was not acceptable. And not only that, you tampered with government records because there's no record now of that original reporting on the CDC website about the sexually transmitted diseases.